In Mexico, more than 90% voted in favor of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's continuity in the recall referendum on Sunday. The turnout did not make the process binding. In France, with more than 25% of abstentions, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen moved on to the runoff elections. Along with presidential elections, citizens protested in several cities in rejection to the election outcome. To elect a new prime minister amid large protests sparked by the removal of Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. More than 90% voted in favor of the continuity of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador in the recall referendum on Sunday, according to preliminary data from the National Electoral Institute. Between 90.3% and 91.9% of voters who went to the polls voted in favor of his continuation in office for 2.5 years of his term, while between 6.4% and 7.8% preferred the recall, according to information provided by the president of the National Electoral Institute, Lorenzo Córdoba. However, the turnout was between 17% and 18.2%, a figure very far from the 40% needed for the consultation to be binding.
The voting percentage is between a lower limit of 90.3% and an upper limit of 91.9%. Citizen participation is between 17% and 18.2%.
The former vice president of Ecuador, Jorge Glass, was received by family and supporters after being released from La Tacunga prison this Sunday. The former vice president of the Republic, Jorge Glass, recovered his freedom by midday after executing the habeas corpus granted by the judge of the multi-component judicial unit of Maglar Alto in Santa Elena, after considering that the physical and psychological integrity of the former vice president was at risk. Glass' release was scheduled for this Saturday night, April 9th. However, Glass' lawyer informed that due to the dactyloscopy process, it had to be postponed. The former vice president was received by hundreds of citizens gathered outside the La Tacunga prison in the early hours of the morning, awaiting for his release. In Ecuador, Jorge Glass was released this Sunday from La Tacunga prison while a group of sympathizers gathered outside the penitentiary. Glass was finally released this Sunday 10th after a judge from the parish of Santa Elena, Javier Moscoso, granted him a habeas corpus. For his part, the defense attorney, Edison Loaiza, explained that he had not been released on Saturday as expected due to the lack of the fingerprint examination. The entrance to the penitentiary center was surrounded with metal fences and other security measures, while demonstrators chanted slogans in favor of Jorge Glass. In the Dominican Republic, all Haitians pursuing university studies legalized their residency status when they received the documentation confiscated by the authorities. Port-au-Prince Foreign Ministry informed that the 206 passports with student visas that had not yet been already received the legal status after they were confiscated by the Dominican government in May 2021, following a harsh exchange of declarations between the President Luis Abinader and the then Foreign Minister of Haiti, Claude Joseph. Likewise, the diplomatic representation of Haiti in the Dominican Republic pointed out in a press release that 1,205 visas and passports pending since 2021, whose validity expired due to the delay in the procedures, were renewed. The Venezuelan government reported that another group of people from Peru arrived in the country for their return to the homeland plan. Today, a new group of fellow countrymen from Peru returns after a new day of the return to the homeland plan to continue filling Venezuelan families with hope and joy, said the Foreign Ministry of the country in its Twitter account. On March 22nd, the government announced the beginning of a new phase of the plan, launched in September 2018 to enable the safe return of the people victims of xenophobia in host countries. Up to date, more than 28,000 Venezuelan citizens who had left the country have returned through this plan. In the United States, at least 2 people were killed and 10 wounded in a shooting at a nightclub in the state of Iowa in the wee hours of this Sunday. According to local authorities, 2 armed men entered a nightclub in the city of Cedar Rapids. According to reports, the gunmen began shooting at the people there. The events caused a stampede of around 100 people that left several wounded. Police sources say the assailants likely fled during the stampede. Shanghai's largest temporary hospital, the National Exhibition and Convention Center, opened to enhance the city's treatment capacity for COVID-19 infection in its latest COVID-19 resurgence. More than 6,000 beds were put into initial use, and around 50,000 beds will be provided for COVID-19 patients after constructions in other pavilions is completed. According to China Telecom Shanghai branch, the temporary hospital is covered with fast and stable 4G, 5G fiber optical broadband services and Wi-Fi networks, enabling 5G disinfecting robots and delivery robots to aid the epidemic fight. Meanwhile, district-level temporary hospitals in the city now provide a total of 21,000 beds. Experts call for caution as COVID-19 continues to spread in Europe and puts strains on health systems in some European countries. In Germany, more than 22 million confirmed COVID-19 cases had been reported as of Saturday, an increase of more than 150,000 over the previous day, according to the report of the Robert Koch Institute. In addition, 300 new deaths had been reported, bringing the death toll to more than 130,000. French health authorities on Saturday reported more than 140,000 new coronavirus cases and 74 related deaths in the past 24 hours. In Britain, data from the Office for the National Statistics suggested that case numbers in the country remain high, with nearly 4.9 million people estimated to have been infected in the country since the beginning of the pandemic, up to the week ending April the 2nd. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back from the South. In France, with an abstention of over 25%, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen move on to the second round of this Sunday's presidential elections. According to the official count, with 97% of the votes registered, current President Emmanuel Macron of the Republic on the Move party leads the race, having achieved 27.60% of votes. The far-right candidate of the National Rally Party, Le Pen, tallies 23.41%. Following the second round rival is the candidate for the France Insoumise Party, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, with 21.95% of votes. Reports indicated that the attendance of this first round was 75.01% of the electoral roll, around 2% less than that registered in the previous election of 2017.
There is something crucial and important in this second round for our future and for Europe, for an independent and strong France in all fields.
Also in France, people demonstrated against the results of the first round of the presidential elections. Citizens gathered in the center of the cities of Lyon and Rennes after the announcement of the result of the first round of the elections. Authorities reported that protesters set up barricades and attacked security forces with fireworks, which caused a fire in the Rennes city square. They say that the fire department is working in the affected area of the city while security forces continue to try to disperse the demonstrators. Political analyst Roberto Mero highlighted in an interview the flaws of current French President Emmanuel Macron's government and how his administration has affected the country's political status.
Macron governed like an autonomous monarch without a parliament, with a parliament that did not debate and absolute anything during the COVID-19 pandemic, with a lot of paternalism, absolute disregard of a political or ideological debate with the opposition, and this has led to the general downfall of the political order in France. It's a challenge, a very hostile democratic challenge in the last months, at least since September, Macron tried to steer out of improving his image amid the overview of the situation, trying to end it by any means, but he never ruled with any rate over 23 or 24% of votes. That's his electoral range, upper middle class citizens and consolidated professional sector of society, while the rest of the population, 70% of voters, demand adjustments.
The Russian Defense Ministry announced the destruction of a nationalist battalion base where foreign mercenaries presumably arrived recently. The Russian army announced on Sunday the destruction of the headquarters of the Ukrainian Dnipro 1 regiment, located in the Dnipro region east of the country. According to the Defense Ministry, a Russian Black Sea frigate fired 4 missiles towards ground targets in Ukraine, destroying the headquarters of the nationalist battalion. In addition, within the framework of the special military operation, Russia destroyed 86 Ukrainian military facilities and shot down 8 Ukrainian drones. From Russia, authorities reported on the evacuation of about 19,000 people from Ukraine in the last 24 hours. The head of the National Defense Management Center of Russia, Mikhail Mizintsev, stressed that the Russian armed forces removed more than 18,000 people to their territory from the Donbass and several dangerous regions of Ukraine. Among the evacuated, there are more than 2,900 children, including nearly 723,102 people, of which over 138,000 children have been evacuated since the beginning of the military operation. It should be noted that through this operation, President Putin is seeking the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. A TeleSUR crew traveled to the rural town of Stila, north of Donetsk. Until recently, the border between the Donetsk People's Republic and Ukraine is a target of constant shelling. This is what they tell us about the new life there.
This road has been here for more than 240 years, and until last February, it received daily punishment from the Ukrainian artillery. This demolished wall was the last shell on February 24, the starting day of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine.
For 8 years, we were a frontline area, that is, literally 5 kilometers from the gray zone. Well, the surprise is the worst thing about the bombing. We don't know why, because we have no military in the village. Everyone is in the field, in the plantations, in the trenches, but not in the village. Why was this done? We don't know. Well, that's the situation.
This public school contains perhaps the essence of life in these regions. Modest, simple and clean. The students are not there now. The classes are at a distance as long as the conflict lasts.
Now we can be calm. There is no shooting in our village, but we still feel that there is a danger nearby. So, well, hopefully, let's say the children are already used to it. We are used to war, but nevertheless, that doesn't make us give up our studies. The kids are great. I mean, they show the desire to go to school, to participate in activities. We are used to it, and that's why we keep working, and so are the children.
The Stila Museum preserves the Greek heritage of its founders, who came from Crimea and Mariupol. But also the most vibrant memories of the anti-fascist struggle, which today motivate the struggle for survival.
My grandfather was a communist. He went to the front, and grandmother had 2 small children of 2 and 1 year old. My uncles and my grandmother were warned at night that they were on the redundancy list, that they would come for her in the morning.
Elena Kudinova has her husband and son fighting for the complete liberation of the port of Mariupol, south of the Donbass.
Now, my 18-year-old son is in Mariupol. They took away his childhood and they took away his youth. We are not against Ukraine. Let there be Ukraine. But those Nazis should never have despised the 22 million dead during the Great Patriotic War. Now, on the other side of the world, they see how they walk around with fascist symbols. Now, the whole history has been redrawn. The concentration camps have been forgotten. Everything has been forgotten.
In the distance, the cannons still roar, but here one can walk in peace. Religious domes and Soviet symbols coexist. They are united by history. Cristian Inostroza and Alejandro Kirk, TeleSUR, Stila, Donbass.
Presidential elections were held this Sunday at South Ossetia, and according to Igor Shoshiyev, member of the country's Central Election Commission, there was a final voter turnout of 82.07%. Incumbent President Anatoly Bibilov, Parliament Deputy Speaker Alexander Pilizhev, Nika's party leader Alan Gagloyev, lawmaker Gary Muldarov, and former lawmaker Dmitry Tassoyev are the contenders for the presidential office. For any of them to win, they need over half of the votes. If no candidate gets a clear majority, the two candidates that win the most votes are the ones to make it to the next round, a runoff election to be set up 2 weeks from now. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Pakistan's parliament meets on Monday to elect a new prime minister amid large protests sparked by the ousting of Imran Khan. Shehbaz Sharif is seen as the opposition's consensus candidate and the main contender, according to local press reports, after the now former Prime Minister Khan was ousted over the weekend in a no-confidence motion. Shehbaz Sharif, brother of exiled leader and former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, also chairs the main coalition party, the Muslim League of Pakistan. The election of the new Prime Minister on Monday will not, however, put an end to the weeks of strong political instability in Pakistan, since Khan has denounced that an international conspiracy is behind the no-confidence motion that removed him from office. The ouster of Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan led his supporters onto the streets Sunday night in protest. Khan's supporters accused Washington of orchestrating his ouster and his party walkout of parliament shortly before the vote. At the end, 174 lawmakers in the 342-seat parliament voted to depose him, 2 more than the required simple majority.
The legitimate government of the Pakistan removed after Americans' interference. All the institutions like judiciary have them. The same thieves and lures against sponsors, which were imposed by the Parvez Musharraf in the past.
We saw a bold leader in our whole life. We don't want our hope to end. Our children don't spend life like us. We want to ask the whole world. This is not the democratic way to finish the government. What do the superpowers and Americans think? Will they buy us? It doesn't happen that way. Everyone should raise their voice against this decision.
The Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett granted the security forces full freedom of action following a deadly shooting in Tel Aviv, the latest in a surge of attacks.
We will be at every place, at any time, as needed to cut off these terror attacks. Israel is going to on defensive. During the weekend, we conducted a situation assessment. The EDF, Shin Bet, and police are operating around the clock in order to restore security and cut off this wave of terror. I repeat, there are no restrictions whatsoever on the EDF and Shin Bet and other security forces in the war against terror.
Syria's air defense forces fended off an Israeli missile attack targeting the central region of the Arab country. The Israeli Air Force launched a targeted attack aimed at the province of Hama. The Syrian air defense forces managed to shut down most of the projectiles. However, there were reports of property damage. Syrian authorities reported that no lives were lost. Israel is systematically attacking Syrian territory, despite Damascus' numerous complaints to the United Nations Security Council that these actions violate its sovereignty and threatens regional stability. In Iran, parliamentarians warned that the to reach a new deal on the revival of the 2015 agreement, the U.S. government must give a legally firm guarantee that it will not abandon that agreement again. The parliamentarian said that the experience gained in past rounds of talks in Vienna shows that the unwillingness of the United States and other negotiating parties to provide the necessary guarantees has not only failed to satisfy Iran's national interests, but has damaged them and caused the failure of the agreement. The announcement came in a statement signed by more than 250 members of the Iranian parliament on Sunday. It focused on the status of the ongoing talks in the Austrian capital on reviving the agreement officially known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. More than 1,000 Tunisians rallied on Sunday decrying what they say was a power grab by President Kais Saied and his proposed constitutional reforms. Protesters in the capital Tunis participated in the rally organized by the Islamist-inspired Ennahda party and a movement named Citizens Against the Coup. Saied, on July 25th last year, sacked the government, froze the assembly, and seized wide-ranging powers. He later gave himself powers to rule and legislate by decree and seize control of the judiciary. Last month, the head of state dissolved parliament, dealing another blow to the political system in place since the North African country's 2011 revolt, which sparked the Arab Spring uprisings in the region.
It's a political crisis that is growing, taking root and weighing heavily on the Tunisian economy and finances, on the daily life of Tunisians. The situation in the country is getting worse. That's what 8 months of Kais Saied's rule are like. It is through such gatherings and repeated and recurrent demonstrations that we can seize once again our right to be represented within the framework of a modern constitution and legislative assemblies that are directly and freely elected.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website on telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.